The courtroom was a sea of whispers and anticipation. Wooden benches filled with spectators creaked softly as they shifted for a better view, their gazes flickering between the imposing judge seated high on his bench and the poised woman standing at the defense table. The sunlight streaming through tall windows did little to warm the cool, tension-laden air. Samantha Brooks stood tall, her black robes pristine, her hands steady on the edge of her desk. She was the kind of lawyer who commanded respect, not with loud theatrics, but with her razor-sharp arguments and unyielding dedication to justice. Today, however, she was facing an uphill battle against more than just a difficult case. At the helm of the courtroom was Judge Albert Grant, a man whose reputation for bias and short temper was well known among legal circles. With his gavel clutched tightly in his hand, he radiated an air of condescension, his sharp eyes narrowing at Samantha as she began her remarks. "Your Honor," Samantha began, her voice steady and clear, "the facts of this case are indisputable. My client, Miss Brooks," Judge Grant interrupted, his tone laced with thinly veiled disdain. "Spare me the theatrics. We've all heard enough already." The courtroom fell silent. Spectators exchanged uneasy glances, and even the stenographer hesitated momentarily before continuing to type. Samantha's jaw tightened, but she didn't falter. Instead, she took a deep breath, her composure unshaken. "Your Honor," she continued calmly, "if I may, I'd like to present—" "You may not," Grant snapped, cutting her off again. He leaned forward slightly, his expression one of smug superiority. "Frankly, I'm not interested in hearing the same tired arguments from you, Miss Brooks. Let's move this along, shall we?" The tension in the room thickened. Samantha's client, a young woman accused of embezzlement despite a lack of concrete evidence, looked down at her hands, her confidence wavering under the weight of the judge's hostility. Samantha placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, a silent promise that she wouldn't give up. The murmur of the courtroom grew louder, whispers of disbelief rippling through the spectators. Among them, a middle-aged man leaned toward his companion. "Did you see that?" he whispered. "Sir, he's not even letting her speak." "She's got to fight back," another spectator murmured. "But how do you fight someone like that?" Samantha met Judge Grant's glare, her expression unreadable. Inside, however, her mind was racing. She knew what she was up against. This wasn't just about her client's case. It was about power, prejudice, and the systemic barriers she had faced her entire career. And today, it seemed, Judge Grant had decided to wield his authority as a weapon against her. But Samantha wasn't the type to back down. "Your Honor," she said again, her voice firmer this time, "with all due respect, I must insist on presenting the evidence that—" Judge Grant banged his gavel, the sound echoing through the courtroom like a thunderclap. "Enough," he barked. "I am the authority in this courtroom, Miss Brooks. If you cannot abide by my rulings, perhaps you should consider another line of work." A collective gasp swept through the room. Samantha's client looked up at her with wide eyes, her fear palpable. Samantha, however, remained calm, her sharp mind already calculating her next move. She straightened her posture, her gaze steady. "Understood, Your Honor," she said evenly, though her words carried a weight that hinted at more than just compliance. Samantha's calm exterior betrayed nothing of the fire igniting within her. She wouldn't allow this blatant disrespect to go unanswered. As the proceedings continued, Samantha listened attentively, taking notes and observing every move Judge Grant made. She noticed the way he dismissed her objections with a wave of his hand, how he leaned forward intently when the opposing counsel spoke, and how he avoided eye contact with her whenever she stood to address the court. Outside the courthouse, word of the exchange began to spread. Reporters who had been covering the trial caught wind of the judge's comments, and social media began to buzz with speculation. Bias in the courtroom? One post read. Black lawyer shut down by judge, justice, or prejudice. Inside the courtroom, Samantha remained focused. She knew this case was no longer just about her client. It was about challenging a system that allowed figures like Judge Grant to misuse their power unchecked. She wouldn't let her emotions get the better of her. Her response would be measured, calculated, and, most importantly, effective. As the session adjourned for the day, Samantha packed her briefcase with quiet efficiency. Spectators filed out of the courtroom, their whispers now louder and tinged with curiosity. Some approached her with words of encouragement, while others simply offered her nods of respect. Samantha acknowledged them with a polite smile but said little. Outside, the courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, their cameras and microphones aimed at the entrance. Samantha emerged, her client by her side, and the crowd surged forward. "Miss Brooks," one reporter called out, "do you have any comments about today's proceedings? Was the judge's behavior inappropriate?" Another asked. Samantha paused at the top of the steps, her expression calm but resolute. "I believe the events of today speak for themselves," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "But this is far from over." Her words sent a ripple through the reporters, their pens and cameras capturing every moment. Samantha turned and guided her client toward a waiting car, her mind already working on the next steps. As the car pulled away, Samantha glanced out the window at the courthouse, her reflection superimposed over the grand facade. Today's battle had been a difficult one, but she knew it was just the beginning. The world would soon see that underestimating her was a mistake, and for Judge Grant, his actions today would soon have consequences he couldn't have foreseen. The tension from the courtroom continued to ripple through the legal community and the media. Samantha Brooks knew that her case wasn't just about her client's innocence. It had become a public battleground for issues far larger. Outside forces were at play, and the weight of systemic prejudice loomed over every decision, every word spoken in Judge Grant's courtroom. Inside her modest but meticulously organized office, Samantha sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of legal documents and case notes. Her client, Lisa, sat across from her eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. Lisa had been accused of embezzlement from her employer, a high-profile financial firm. The evidence against her was circumstantial at best, but the prosecution's relentless pursuit of her case suggested something more personal, a scapegoat for the firm's internal failings. "I don't understand," Lisa said, her voice trembling. "Why does he hate us so much? I've never done anything wrong, and he's acting like I'm already guilty." Samantha looked up from her notes, her gaze steady and reassuring. "This isn't about you, Lisa," she said gently. "It's about power. People like Judge Grant use their authority to intimidate, to silence, but they only succeed if we let them." Lisa nodded slowly, drawing strength from Samantha's unwavering resolve. "What do we do now?" she asked. Samantha leaned back in her chair, her mind already mapping out the next steps. "We fight," she said simply, "but we do it strategically. Grant's behavior in the courtroom isn't just unethical. It's a violation of judicial conduct. I've already filed a motion to have his comments and rulings reviewed." The conflict was escalating on multiple fronts. Judge Grant's courtroom had become a stage, not just for the trial, but for a deeper struggle between justice and systemic bias. Samantha's refusal to back down had already drawn attention, and the media was eager for updates. News outlets ran stories dissecting the trial, focusing on Grant's dismissive treatment of Samantha and the broader implications of his actions. One evening, as Samantha reviewed her case notes at home, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was her mentor, Evelyn Green, a retired judge, known for her fierce advocacy for judicial fairness. "Samantha," Evelyn said, her voice warm but firm, "I've been following your case. You're handling it beautifully, but you're walking a dangerous line. Judge Grant isn't just arrogant. He's vindictive." Samantha exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly at the sound of Evelyn's voice. "I know," she admitted, "but I can't let him intimidate me. If I don't push back—" "Who will? You're right," Evelyn said. "But be careful. Grant has connections and he won't hesitate to use them. Make sure your case is airtight." Samantha nodded, her resolve deepening. "I will," she promised. The next day in court, the tension was palpable. Grant's mood was darker, his tone sharper, as though he felt the weight of the scrutiny now surrounding him. Samantha, however, remained composed, her confidence unshaken. She presented her arguments with precision, anticipating Grant's interruptions and countering them with calm, measured responses. At one point, as Samantha cross-examined a key witness, Grant interrupted yet again. "Miss Brooks," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "are you quite finished wasting this court's time?" Samantha straightened, her gaze steady. "Your Honor," she said evenly, "I am conducting a thorough examination to ensure my client receives a fair trial. Surely that is not a waste of the court's time." A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Grant's face reddened, and he banged his gavel. "Watch yourself, Miss Brooks," he warned. "You're treading on thin ice." Outside the courthouse, the public's interest in the case was growing. Protesters gathered, holding signs that read "Justice for Lisa" and "End Judicial Bias." Social media was ablaze with hashtags like "Stand with Samantha" and "Fair Trial for All." Support poured in from across the country, with activists, legal scholars, and even celebrities weighing in. The pressure on Judge Grant was mounting, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. He imposed stricter rules in his courtroom, limiting Samantha's ability to question witnesses and present evidence. Each ruling seemed more biased than the last, further cementing the perception that Grant was abusing his power. Samantha knew she needed to act. That evening, she met with her legal team to strategize. They reviewed hours of courtroom footage, documenting every instance of bias and misconduct. Samantha also reached out to a journalist she trusted, someone with a reputation for exposing corruption. "Are you sure about this?" her colleague Mark asked as they prepared a dossier of evidence. "Going public could backfire." "It's a risk I'm willing to take," Samantha said firmly. "This isn't just about Lisa. It's about every person who's been silenced or dismissed by someone like Grant." The journalist, an investigative reporter named Rachel Thomas, was eager to take on the story. "This is bigger than one case," Rachel said during their meeting. "It's about holding the entire system accountable. I'll make sure the truth comes out." The next morning, an expose on Judge Grant's behavior hit the headlines. The article detailed his history of bias, citing past complaints and testimonies from other lawyers who had faced similar treatment. The report also included excerpts from Samantha's case, highlighting his repeated attempts to undermine her. The story went viral within hours. Public outrage exploded, with calls for Grant's removal growing louder. Samantha's decision to go public had ignited a firestorm, and now the spotlight was firmly on the judge. Back in the courtroom, Grant's demeanor was visibly shaken. He attempted to maintain his authority, but the cracks in his confidence were evident. Samantha, however, remained as poised as ever, her quiet determination cutting through the tension. As the trial continued, the stakes grew higher. Samantha's every move was scrutinized, not just by Grant, but by the public and the media. Yet, she refused to waver. For every biased ruling Grant made, Samantha responded with grace and skill, ensuring that her client's voice was heard. The conflict between Samantha and Grant had become a battle not just of legal arguments, but of principles and values, and as the trial progressed, it became clear that this wasn't just a fight for Lisa's innocence. It was a fight for justice itself. As Samantha stepped out of the courthouse after yet another grueling day, the air buzzed with anticipation. The crowd of reporters, protesters, and onlookers had grown larger, their presence a stark reminder that this trial had become far more than a simple legal case. It was a battleground, and everyone wanted to know what Samantha Brooks, the unyielding black lawyer, would do next. The courtroom drama had already made national headlines, but the revelations about Judge Grant's history of bias had turned the trial into a flashpoint. Social media was ablaze with clips from the courtroom, especially those where Samantha had stood firm against Grant's dismissive interruptions. Phrases like, "We need more lawyers like Samantha," and "Grant's courtroom is a circus," dominated trending hashtags. The stakes were higher than ever, and Samantha felt their weight with every step. One evening, as Samantha pored over case files in her office, she received a package. It was nondescript, with no return address, which made her cautious. She opened it carefully to find a USB drive inside. A note attached to it read, "You'll want to see this. A friend." Her heart raced. Samantha plugged the drive into her computer, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened the only file on it, a video recording. The footage showed Judge Grant in his chambers, having a heated conversation with a lead prosecutor. The audio was clear. "Make sure you don't let her win," Grant barked. "If that lawyer walks out of here with a victory, it'll be chaos. We can't let her set a precedent." Samantha froze. Her suspicions were confirmed. Grant wasn't just biased. He was actively conspiring against her. She replayed the video, her mind racing with questions. Who had sent this? Could it be trusted? And most importantly, how could she use it without jeopardizing the trial? Determined to get answers, Samantha reached out to Rachel Thomas, the investigative journalist who had broken the initial story about Grant. "I need your help," Samantha said, showing Rachel the footage. Rachel's eyes widened as she watched. "This changes everything," Rachel said. "If this is authentic, it's not just judicial bias, it's corruption." Samantha nodded. "But I can't use it without verifying its source. If it's inadmissible, it'll hurt my client's case more than it helps." Rachel leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "Let me handle that," she said. "I'll find out where this came from. In the meantime, you focus on the trial." With Rachel on the case, Samantha returned to the courtroom the next day with renewed determination. Judge Grant's condescending behavior continued, but Samantha was unshaken. She countered every interruption with professionalism, every unfair ruling with calm logic. The courtroom audience, now packed with supporters, watched in awe as she navigated the trial with unmatched skill. A week later, Rachel called Samantha with an update. "I've found the source," Rachel said. "It's one of Grant's former clerks. They've seen enough of his corruption and decided to speak out. They're willing to testify." Samantha's breath caught. This was the breakthrough she needed. "Will they go on record?" she asked. "Yes," Rachel said. "But they want assurances. They're scared of retaliation." Samantha understood the risk, but knew this testimony could be the tipping point. "Tell them I'll protect their identity as much as possible," she said. Rachel agreed, and the wheels were set in motion. Samantha prepared a motion to introduce the video as evidence, citing the whistleblower's testimony as its foundation. It was a gamble, but she knew it was a risk worth taking. When Samantha submitted her motion, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Judge Grant's expression darkened as he read the filing. "Miss Brooks," he said, his voice icy. "This is a serious accusation. Are you certain you want to pursue this?" Samantha met his gaze, her voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor. The evidence speaks for itself." Grant attempted to dismiss the motion, but Samantha was prepared. She cited precedents, her arguments airtight. The courtroom erupted in whispers as she presented the video footage and the whistleblower's statement. For the first time, Grant looked visibly rattled. The prosecution objected vehemently, but Samantha held her ground. "This isn't just about my client," she said. "This is about the integrity of this courtroom. If Judge Grant has acted improperly, the people deserve to know." The tension was palpable as the courtroom adjourned for the day. Outside, the crowd of supporters cheered as Samantha emerged, their chants of "Justice for Samantha" echoing through the streets. The next morning, Samantha received an anonymous email threatening her to drop the case. The message was vague, but menacing. "Back off, or you'll regret it." She showed the email to Rachel and her legal team, who urged her to report it. Samantha filed a complaint with the authorities but refused to let the threats deter her. "They're scared," she said. "That means we're getting close to the truth." Meanwhile, Judge Grant launched a counterattack, attempting to discredit Samantha. He accused her of fabricating evidence, questioning her credibility in a public statement. But Samantha was prepared for this, too. She held a press conference, calmly refuting his claims with facts and evidence. "I have nothing to hide," she said, addressing the crowd of reporters. But can the same be said for Judge Grant? The public response was overwhelmingly in her favor. Social media exploded with support, with hashtags like #JusticeForSamantha and #ExposeGrant trending nationwide. As the trial neared its conclusion, the courtroom was packed to capacity. Samantha presented her closing arguments with precision and passion, highlighting the flaws in the prosecution's case and the systemic biases that had plagued the trial. Grant attempted to interrupt, but Samantha pressed on. "Your Honor," she said firmly, "I have the right to defend my client without interference. If this court is truly about justice, then let me do my job." The audience erupted in applause, forcing Grant to call for order. But the damage was done. Samantha had exposed the cracks in his authority, and the tide of public opinion was firmly against him. The whistleblower's testimony was the final nail in the coffin. They described in detail how Grant had manipulated cases, showing a clear pattern of bias and corruption. The courtroom fell silent as the gravity of their words sank in. Just as the jury prepared to deliberate, a high-ranking official from the Judicial Oversight Committee entered the courtroom. They announced that Judge Grant was under investigation and would be temporarily removed from the bench. Gasps filled the room as Grant was escorted out, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. Samantha remained composed, though relief washed over her. The trial would continue with a new judge, one who was unbiased and fair. It was a victory, but the fight wasn't over. The courtroom buzzed softly with murmurs and the occasional shuffle of papers. Onlookers whispered to one another, their words a mix of curiosity and judgment about the case unfolding before them. Attorney Maya Brooks sat at the plaintiff's table, her spine straight and her eyes fixed firmly on Judge Aldridge. Her hands rested calmly on her open notebook, though the tension in her jaw betrayed her inner frustration. Maya's reputation as a skilled and relentless attorney had followed her into this courtroom, but so had the barriers of prejudice she had faced her entire career. Today, however, those barriers were personified in the form of Judge Aldridge, a man notorious for his condescending demeanor toward female and minority lawyers. From the very beginning of the trial, Aldridge's disdain for Maya was evident. His dismissive tone, frequent interruptions, and thinly veiled remarks about her style of presentation painted a clear picture of his bias. Each time she tried to present her argument, he cut her off, leaning back in his chair with an air of superiority that seemed to fill the room. "Ms. Brooks," Aldridge said, his voice dripping with condescension, "if you're quite finished repeating the obvious, perhaps we can move on to something relevant." Maya took a slow, measured breath. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest, "the evidence I am presenting directly supports my client's claim. It is crucial that—" "Enough," Aldridge interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "I've already reviewed the evidence, and I don't need a lecture. Move on." The gallery shifted uncomfortably, their attention torn between Maya's composed frustration and Aldridge's blatant disregard for decorum. Maya glanced briefly at her client, a middle-aged man who looked both apologetic and helpless in the face of the judge's behavior. But Maya wasn't just representing her client in this courtroom. She was representing every black woman who had ever been underestimated, dismissed, or silenced in spaces they had fought tirelessly to enter. And she wasn't about to let Aldridge's bias derail her. "Your Honor," Maya said, her voice firm, "with all due respect, this evidence is pivotal to my client's case. I respectfully request the opportunity to present it without interruption." Aldridge's face reddened slightly, and the corners of his mouth twisted into a smirk. "Ms. Brooks, I suggest you tread carefully. This is my courtroom, not a stage for your personal crusade." The words hung in the air, their weight pressing down on Maya, but instead of shrinking under the scrutiny, she straightened her posture and met Aldridge's gaze head-on. "Understood, Your Honor," she said, her tone calm but resolute. "However, I must insist that my client's right to a fair trial be upheld." A faint ripple of murmurs swept through the gallery, and Aldridge's eyes narrowed. "Proceed," he said curtly, leaning back in his chair, as though granting her a favor. Maya returned to her argument, her voice unwavering as she laid out the details of the case. But Aldridge's interruptions continued, each one chipping away at the rhythm of her presentation. He questioned her every point, mischaracterized her statements, and even sighed loudly as she spoke, making no effort to hide his disdain. As the afternoon wore on, Maya's frustration simmered beneath the surface. She could feel the weight of the gallery's eyes on her, the mix of sympathy, pity, and doubt. But she also felt something else: determination. She refused to let Aldridge reduce her to a caricature of the angry, black woman he clearly expected her to become. During a brief recess, Maya stepped into the hallway, her hands trembling with the effort of holding herself together. She knew she couldn't afford to show any cracks in her armor. Not here, not now. A colleague approached her, a young white man named Eric, who had been watching the trial from the back of the courtroom. "Maya," Eric said, his voice low, "that judge is completely out of line. Are you okay?" Maya gave him a tight smile. "I've faced worse," she said simply. "This isn't about me. It's about getting justice for my client." Eric hesitated, his brow furrowing. "Still, you shouldn't have to deal with this. Have you thought about filing a complaint?" Maya's jaw tightened. "Complaints take time, and my client doesn't have that luxury. I need to focus on this case." Eric nodded, though the concern in his eyes remained. "If you need anything, let me know," he said before walking away. Maya leaned against the wall, closing her eyes for a moment. She thought of her family, her parents, who had instilled in her the importance of resilience, and her younger sister, who looked up to her as a role model. They had all faced their share of discrimination, but they had also taught Maya to stand tall in the face of injustice. When the trial resumed, Maya returned to the courtroom with renewed resolve. She met Aldridge's gaze without flinching, her expression calm and unyielding. If he thought he could intimidate her into submission, he was sorely mistaken. As the day drew to a close, Maya delivered her closing argument with a clarity and passion that left the courtroom silent. Even Aldridge seemed momentarily taken aback by the strength of her words. "My client is not asking for special treatment," Maya said, her voice steady. "He is asking for the same justice that every citizen is entitled to under the law, and that justice requires this court to consider the evidence without bias or prejudice." She let her words hang in the air for a moment before continuing. "Your Honor, I trust that you will honor your duty to uphold the principles of fairness and equality that this courtroom represents." When she finished, the gallery erupted into quiet applause. Before Aldridge could restore order, he glared at Maya, his expression a mixture of anger and grudging respect. "You may be excused," he said stiffly, his tone colder than ever. Maya gathered her things and left the courtroom, her head held high. She had done her part, and now it was up to the court to deliver its verdict. But as she walked out into the crisp evening air, she couldn't shake the feeling that this case was just the beginning of something much bigger. The next morning, Maya's phone buzzed with notifications. Overnight, a video of her courtroom exchange with Aldridge had gone viral, sparking a national conversation about systemic bias in the legal system. Clips of her calm but powerful rebuttals were being shared across social media, accompanied by hashtags like #JusticeForAll and #WomenInLaw. Messages flooded her inbox, some from strangers offering support, others from fellow lawyers sharing their own experiences of discrimination. News outlets reached out for interviews, and advocacy groups began rallying around Maya as a symbol of resilience and change. Maya's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and humility. She hadn't set out to become a public figure, but if her experience could inspire others to challenge injustice, then it was worth it. As she prepared for another day in court, Maya couldn't help but smile. Judge Aldridge had underestimated her, but in doing so, he had unintentionally given her a platform to shine a light on the very issues he had tried to dismiss. And Maya had no intention of stepping out of that light any time soon. The morning sun streamed through Maya's office window, casting a warm glow over the meticulously organized desk. Maya sipped her coffee, her mind a whirl of thoughts and emotions. The viral video of her courtroom exchange with Judge Aldridge had sparked a firestorm of public attention. While the support was overwhelming, Maya knew the fight was far from over. Her retaliation wasn't just about one judge or one case. It was about addressing the systemic barriers that undermine justice. News headlines blared across televisions and online platforms. Attorney Maya Brooks stands firm against prejudiced judge, bias in the courtroom exposed, and black lawyer challenges systemic racism, becomes a symbol of resilience. Clips of the courtroom confrontation were dissected by pundits, lawyers, and advocates alike, but not all the attention was positive. Critics labeled her as confrontational, accusing her of seeking publicity. Anonymous threats and hateful messages began appearing in her inbox, a grim reminder of the challenges faced by women of color who dared to challenge the status quo. Maya sat back in her chair, scrolling through the comments. She paused on one that read, "For every person like Aldridge, there are 10 more in the system. Keep fighting. We see you." She closed her eyes, drawing strength from the words. This was no longer just about her. It was about every person fighting for fairness in a world stacked against them. Maya's focus turned to the next steps. While the trial verdict was still pending, she recognized an opportunity to challenge Aldridge's conduct on a broader scale. She began drafting a formal complaint, outlining his pattern of dismissive behavior and bias not only toward her, but also toward other attorneys and plaintiffs. She reached out to colleagues who had faced similar treatment. Many were hesitant to speak up, fearing retaliation, But Maya's courage inspired a few to share their experiences. They recounted incidents of Aldridge interrupting women more frequently than men, disproportionately ruling against minority plaintiffs, and making offhand comments that revealed his biases. One colleague, a Latina attorney named Carla, shared her story. "He called me Miss throughout my entire argument, even though I corrected him multiple times. It was so demeaning." Another lawyer, an older black man named Marcus, recounted a case where Aldridge had blatantly dismissed key evidence, saying, "Let's not waste time on irrelevant details." As Maya gathered these accounts, she realized the depth of the issue. This wasn't just about one man's prejudice. It was about a system that allowed such behavior to persist unchecked. The next time Maya entered Aldridge's courtroom, she felt the weight of the public's expectations on her shoulders. The gallery was packed with reporters and supporters, their presence a testament to the attention her case had garnered. Aldridge's demeanor was noticeably colder. His attempts to maintain authority seemed strained under the scrutiny of the crowd. He interrupted Maya less frequently, but still found ways to undermine her arguments with dismissive remarks. At one point, as Maya presented a key piece of evidence, Aldridge sighed loudly. "Ms. Brooks," he said, "do you plan to repeat every point ad nauseum?" Maya met his gaze, her voice steady. "Your Honor, I present my arguments thoroughly to ensure that justice is served. If clarity is tedious, I apologize." The gallery stirred, a few spectators stifling smiles. Aldridge's face reddened and he quickly moved on. But the balance of power in the room had shifted. Maya's calm defiance, combined with the public's watchful eyes, made it clear that she would not be silenced. As the trial neared its conclusion, Maya received an unexpected call from an investigative journalist named Rachel. "Maya," Rachel began, "I've been digging into Aldridge's history, and there's something you need to see." Rachel shared documents revealing a pattern of complaints filed against Aldridge over the years, many of which had been quietly dismissed. The complaints ranged from accusations of bias to questionable financial dealings involving influential figures. The most damning revelation was a series of emails that suggested Aldridge had colluded with certain defense attorneys to favor corporate clients over individuals. Maya's breath caught as she read the emails. This wasn't just about prejudice, it was about corruption. "This changes everything," Maya said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing within her. Rachel hesitated. "It's risky," she said. "Going public with this could put a target on your back." Maya's lips pressed into a thin line. "The truth needs to come out," she said, "no matter the risk." On the final day of the trial, Maya walked into the courtroom armed not only with her legal arguments, but also with the weight of the truth. She delivered her closing statement with a passion that left the room silent. "This case is about more than my client," she said. "It's about the integrity of our legal system. Justice must be blind, not biased. It must serve the people, not personal interests, and it must hold everyone accountable, judges included." The gallery erupted into applause, and Aldridge's gavel came down hard. "Order!" he barked, his face a mask of anger. The crowd erupted into cheers, their energy a testament to the collective power of solidarity. Maya's speech was live-streamed, reaching an even broader audience and inspiring countless others to join the fight for equality and fairness. That evening, Maya returned to her office, the day's events replaying in her mind. She opened her laptop and began typing a heartfelt message to her supporters. "Today, we achieved something extraordinary, but our work is far from over. The fight for justice is ongoing, and it requires all of us to stand together, to challenge the systems that perpetuate inequality, and to build a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Thank you for your unwavering support. Let's keep going, because together we can make a difference. She hit post, watching as the message quickly gained traction online. The words resonated deeply, echoing the sentiments of countless individuals who shared her vision for a better future. As the night wore on, Maya received a call from her mother. "I'm so proud of you, Maya," her mother said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've done something incredible. Your father would be so proud." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Mom," she said softly. "I couldn't have done this without everything you and Dad taught me." Her mother chuckled warmly. "Well, you've taken those lessons and turned them into something even bigger. You're making a difference, Maya. And I know this is just the beginning." Maya smiled, her heart full. The journey had been long and challenging, but moments like this reminded her why she had chosen this path. As the days turned into weeks, Maya continued her work with renewed purpose. She took on new cases, each one an opportunity to advance the cause of justice. Her experiences with Aldridge had strengthened her resolve, and she used her platform to advocate for reforms within the legal system. She also became a mentor, guiding young lawyers and law students who were inspired by her journey. She shared her insights, challenges, and victories, encouraging them to pursue justice with integrity and courage. Maya's story became a rallying cry for change, proving that even in the face of adversity, resilience and determination could create a ripple effect that touched countless lives. As the camera pans across Maya's bustling office, the screen fades to black, and a powerful message appears. Justice is not given, it is fought for. Together, we can build a world where fairness prevails. Share and subscribe to join the fight for equality. Your voice matters. Justice isn't given, it's fought for. Together, we can make a difference. If Maya's story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories. Your voice matters. Join the fight for equality today.